Good morning, Wrestling Inc. Welcome back to the Wrestling Inc. Daily. It is me, your managing editor of WrestlingInc.com, joined here today, as I am every Thursday, by our very good friend, Paul Pratt. Paul, welcome back to the Wrestling Inc. Daily.
Hey, Nick. How are you?
I'm good, man. Now, we got a big show to get to here today.
Absolutely.
If you're listening in audio form, you're going to get the Cody Rhodes media call here in a little bit. We're recording right after we record this here today. We can't live stream it, but if you want to hear it, you can go listen to it over on the daily, the audio version of the show. We'll dive into the mailbag. We're going to look at what you all want to see Finn Balor do next in WWE, but none of this is relevant. Of course, we'll talk the news. Paul, you got to hang out with Lita. What the hell happened here? You know?
Yeah. So I did. I hung out with Lita for 3 hours on Tuesday. It was crazy.
What?
It was nuts. So the backstory here, very briefly, is that I did a live stream on Twitch with Effie and Zicky Dice. Lita joined in, popped on just a chat or whatever. I lost my mind. I mean, it's Lita, right? Yeah. And shortly after the stream, I got this direct message on my Instagram. She'd started following me on Instagram, and so we've been chatting back and forth. That she messaged me. She had a photo shoot on Tuesday, and she told me she wanted me to come and be the art director for the photo shoot.
What does an art director do? What does that mean?
It means that you're standing there saying, "Oh, what about this backdrop? What about this? Stand more this way. Try this. Put your hand on your hip, whatever." Okay. And yeah, and then the crazier part, I went on Instagram Live last night and she joined me. And this is the power, you guys, this is the power of Lita. First of all, she was just there chatting. And then she requested to come on live. And within seconds, Nick, there were like 600 viewers.
Wow.
Instantly. The power of Lita.
Wow. So, dude, that's awesome, man.
It's crazy.
So are you guys like besties now? Or are you guys gonna be like,
hey, oh yeah, absolutely. Sorry, Trish. You're out. Trish out, Boyo in, Paul in, So no, one of the things I love about Lita and Trish both is I think that they both have an understanding, for example, of what their impact for the LGBTQ community was, because they have an obsessive fan base that's rooted in that. Lita told me her fans are almost exclusively women and gay men.
What?
Yeah, that's what she told me.
Really? Yeah. I did not know that those two were so ingrained in the LGBTQ culture. I guess it's just nothing I'd really ever thought too much about. But
I think that it's because of the fact that, gay men specifically, we love strong women figures. Those strong women are kind of central to our culture.
Dolly Parton all day, Dolly.
Yeah, all day, right? So, I mean, my alter ego is I embody what I think a strong woman is. So I think that for us, it's just, we love them. We love them and they love us,
Wow. That's so cool. This was the best start to the day. We have putting you over in the comments and putting you over writing, wow, cool. We also have Emperor 37 AN of San Francisco. Paul is an effing badass, such an inspiration and an idol. Yeah, guys. We're just getting going here today. How cool is this? The energies in the room are wonderful at the moment. I'm going to go light some sage here in a bit. Be a part of this with us. We're going to talk more. You could join the comment section. You can leave comments wherever you're at. We'll pull them up here on the old screen. We'll talk about them. Somebody's given us a heart. How wonderful. If you'd like to do that or thumbs up.
I love hearts.
All the hearts are great. It's BTS does this now, right? Is that the thing where they go like this? I saw it on late night.
I don't know, but they're like butter. BTS is like butter.
Okay,
great. New song.
I didn't know that. Well, Paul, I don't know. I think I might surprise you here. Did you know there was breaking news literally just before we recorded? We started.
No, what was it?
Okay, so it actually kind of ties in. So news you can use, news would leave a bruise. It ties into, we were going to talk the Raw commentary stuff at the beginning. Yeah. I teased on yesterday's show. Now, I teased that I heard that the layoffs were going to continue, that we were not out of the woods yet as far as the bloodshed of all these stuff that have happened this week. I had also heard that a commentator was either going to be released or had been released. We were sourcing it yesterday, so I couldn't say it on the air, but it looks like our good buddy Sean Ross Sapp over at Fightful has made it public, and so now I guess we could just get it out in the open. Tom Phillips no longer with WWE. I got a tip yesterday about it, and I couldn't say it out loud, but it's out there now. He's no longer with the company.
That people were asking when they had released Adnan and they were looking for somebody to replace him. They were asking what happened to Tom Phillips. Where was he? Now we have the answer.
Not there.
Not there. Gone.
He's been with the company for 9 years, right? And I'm sure he's going to be fine on the other side of this. I hope he kept all of the money he made, I'm sure, for being a big part of that company. But where the depth of that the depth of the commentary bench, man, gets shorter and shorter by the day. I'm really surprised they would let Tom go right now. I always heard he was such a utility player for them when it came to just wherever you need somebody.
Well, the part about all of this that blows my mind still, and this makes me think that it was in huge part, Samoa Joe's decision to leave. I think he wanted to go back into in-ring work. I don't think WWE was going to clear him for that. Right. But in the midst of all of this, Samoa Joe is so sorely missed. The last several weeks of Adnan Virk, and Samoa Joe was just an integral part of that announced team. In my opinion, we've got this person who is not only outstanding on commentary, but he also has what, in my mind, is an obvious Hall of Fame career under his belt. So he has that kind of, respect and admiration, and could have spoken from that place. And just letting him go was just such a loss.
Very Taz-esque, right? Like, I always got hardcore Taz vibes.
Better than Taz, in my opinion.
Better than Taz.
Better than Taz.
Taz is very good. And that's my
opinion. I mean, Taz is great, but I just always loved the fact that Samoa Joe, I think, just felt like Samoa Joe. Taz always has felt like a little bit of a character. Samoa Joe felt really hardcore Samoa Joe, like an individual, authentic individual without so much a gimmick at play. But I just have always thought Joe was better. Again, I think I'm playing the heel. I don't know. It's just my opinions are heelish.
You got some love here.
Heelish.
You got love here from people on the social. So I think there's a lot of people that agree with you. But man, yeah, we got Ryan W here. We stand Tom Phillips. John Cups. I can't believe Tom Phillips is gone from the company. Rob Humphreys. Do they have anyone left to call the show? That's a great question. We got more comments here we'll get to in just a second. Let's fill in the blank here. So who is going to call Raw? We found that out yesterday, right? Former UFC and American Ninja Warrior announcer Jimmy Smith. He's joining the Raw announce team. He's replacing Adnan Virk. The Observer saying Smith is going to be joining Graves and Saxton on May 31st. It was noted that Smith has been working with Michael Cole and other WWE staffers as of late to train for potential announcing roles. He's reportedly Cole is reportedly praised Smith heavily, found him to be very versatile. He was with Bellator from 2010 to 2017. He worked as an analyst for them in UFC. He hosts the Unlocking the Cage show on Sirius XM. He also hosts ESPN's UFC Fight Camp show. He retired from MMA fighting, so he is a former ring competitor or in-cage competitor in 2007 with a 5-1 record, and he's also done commentary for boxing and other combat sports. I'll throw it to you first, Paul. What do you think of the addition here of Jimmy?
I think that he has a resume that speaks for itself in terms of his ability to call combat sports, professional wrestling, sports entertainment. I think that's going to be a big thing for him. He's going to have to really start to learn the key words. Ideally, this means that he is also a fan of professional wrestling. I think that when they brought in Adnan Virk, part of what might have appealed to them is that they're bringing somebody from outside in to have that opportunity to maybe give an outsider's perspective or bring in a new audience. But the reality that we see in the WWE is, number one, they do not want an outsider's perspective. You have to be deeply steeped in their terminology. Things like calling it professional wrestling rather than sports entertainment is a problem. Calling people a wrestler rather than a sports entertainer is a problem. So my hope is that he's going to sound great. First of all, I think he's going to sound like a sports entertainment commentator or professional wrestling commentator. I don't think Adnan Virk ever got that.
Yeah, his voice was a little soft.
Yeah, he sounded, Bully Ray and Dave LaGreca on their podcast, oh wow. They kept, making fun of him for that. I just think that I just don't think, I'm going to backtrack because I want to give Adnan Virk props for taking on something that he may not have been skilled for. And I and you know, that takes a lot of courage to step in front of a rabid audience like professional wrestling fans. The guy got chewed up and spit out for not knowing some of the things, that the nuances that of professional wrestling fans do know, like, you know, histories of moves and the references that the Tamina and Natty Neidhart heart attack clothesline, that he just called it a clothesline, and that's, I mean, while partially true, it doesn't encompass what that means to fans of professional wrestling or what it's an homage to. So, you know, I think that was problematic for him, and I wish that they would have trained him before bringing him on.
That's the big thing here, and that's what I worry about with Jimmy as well, right? And, you know, I guess he was engaging fans on social media yesterday. He telling everybody to tune in, and, you know, he'll give it his best shot and judge me on my merits, and I guess we'll have to do just that.
Yeah.
But, you know, with Jimmy, I worry because there was also this tweet that he stopped watching, I guess, in like 2017 or like whatever. Like he started watching again after not watching for a long time. So he was not like a lifer kind of fan, which can be a problem. But you know, we had Rich Bikini on yesterday, and Rich, former SmackDown commentator, Rich Brennan, and it's like one of my favorite interviews, not just because I know Rich and I work with Rich and I like Rich, but it's the most candid I've ever heard him open up about his time there and really wearing it all on his sleeve about how he didn't feel like he was ready. You know, this is verbatim kind of the story he told about himself that ended up not working out. You know, the Michael Cole is working with him. Okay, well, Rich yesterday told us that Michael Cole, you know, is not available all the time. Michael Cole is a very busy human being.
Of course.
You look down at the Performance Center, right?
Exactly my thought.
The wrestlers start and end all day training. They have coaches that are training them. They have coaches putting them through. It is a much more fluid situation, I'll put it that way, with the commentators. It's not structured. And this sounds to me like exactly what happened to Adnan, that happened to Rich, that's happened to a lot of people, is they just kind of get thrown in, given a cup of coffee worth of advice, and it's just sink or swim. We'll see if you stick around. Are you the next Jonathan Coachman?
Well, yeah, I mean, we think about this from just a viewing standpoint, but I think about this in large part from a management style and a corporate type of standpoint, right? In corporate America, you want to set your employees up for success. You know, you want to prepare them for what the reality is that they're going to be facing. And is WWE doing that with their commentators? And, you know, it's one thing to, for example, send a seasoned wrestler to NXT to get to learn that WWE style, which is what they talk about. That's why you go to Performance Center. That's why you go to NXT. You learn that WWE style of wrestling. And that's one thing. But those people are at most, if you get the main event spot, maybe 15, 20 minutes of your 3-hour program. That commentator is sitting there in my ear for 3 hours. If they are terrible, the show is terrible.
Yep. And with NXT, you know, NXT used to be the developmental, right? I still think we're going to get like a Peacock exclusive, that more developmental show here in the not too distant future. But now that it's like a main TV brand, you can't easily pull people to the. I mean, you can, but it's harder and it's more jarring. I would love to see a Beth Phoenix in that spot.
Absolutely.
Vic Joseph seems like, okay, yes, he fits that mold. But him and Barrett are so good, and Beth can do play-by-play, you know? I mean, I think that her and Graves or Byron's not going anywhere. Byron can be play-by-play, give him something to do, and let these two do color. But they're training people right now over in NXT that have experience that would be perfect for that role. I don't know why they're going out and finding these people and giving them, again, a cup of coffee's worth of training, and then just throwing them in front of 2 million people on Friday, or on a good week, 2 million people.
Yeah, you're being optimistic now, aren't you? But I watch a lot of wrestling, not just WWE, and I watch a lot of these like indie promotions, right? And
yeah,
my experience of watching those, I will be much more forgiving of terrible in-ring action than I am of somebody sitting for the whole show telling me the stories and being poor, you know, of poor quality. So I think they really should invest a lot more in the people that they give us. And not to mention with all of the variety of people who are not getting the on-air time as performers in ring, why not allow some of those individuals to come out and, fill that space for us a little bit? Like, why do they need a 3-man team when they could very easily sort of splice in various entertainers, sports entertainers from their roster to, kind of flesh those individuals out, give them some on-screen time and give the audience some exposure to those people too.
We'll jump in the comments here real quick. Putting you over, Samoa Joe did seem better than Taz. So agreeing with you, Paul.
Yeah, thanks putting you over.
We also have, let's see here. This is from Nicole Otterman, who said, Paul, you are my favorite LGBTQ person. There's also another comment you put up here earlier, Nicole, that I can't delete. That seems really risque. And I don't know if this is like an inside joke or whatever.
Damn.
Yeah. So
I don't know what that is, but Nicolo whatever. Nick.
Yes.
You need to meet more LGBT people.
Oh, I know. I was down at Boys.
Not you, Nick. That Nick that commented.
Oh,
the one who said I'm their favorite.
Oh,
that
God.
person.
I was about to say.
You need to meet a better quality of LGBT people.
I was about to say.
I'm fair to Midland.
I was in Boys Town yesterday. Okay.
Oh,
that's where my
all right. Come through Chicago.
Yes, that's where my vet is. I get to go to Boys Town and sit and have cocktails while my dog gets a flu shot. It's great. Try it. I'm just saying.
I've been there many times.
Steven Wilson. They need Mauro Ranallo back. Yeah. Anthony Y. Mauro probably won't be going back by choice. I don't see Mauro back in the fold, and I don't really want Mauro back in that role. It seems like a bad fit.
I love Mauro. I love his commentary. I love his enthusiasm. What I noticed about him was one thing on air, and that is that he is a one-man show. He does not need a team of people. He literally is a one-person show. Correct. And so with him on air, it, for example, pushed Beth Phoenix so far to the side, you could literally forget that she was there because she couldn't get a word out edgewise. And the other part that I will note about Mauro, and this is not to be disrespectful of anybody's mental health status or any of those things, he does not seem to be a good fit to be in the public eye with the WWE's or the pro wrestling community's extremely outspoken fan base. The pro wrestling world knows zero filters in letting you know that you're either over or you're not. They hate you. They love you. And he took it really personally. And I think that's easy to do when you're a public persona. But if it's not suited for his mental health, then not being part of that world is probably for the best for him. Yeah,
again, pro wrestling is entertainment. It's different than sports. And that's another thing, going back to the Rich conversation from yesterday where he talked about Mauro, and he was like, Mauro's problem was he couldn't handle the traffic. And the traffic is like, you're calling action, but then you have to throw to a package, or you have to throw to a backstage interview, or you're coming back quickly from commercial, or whatever it is. Like the traffic of all the moving pieces of having to call a live circus on Monday nights, right?
While somebody's screaming in your ear, presumably.
Correct. And that's very different because like Rich has a background calling hockey and basketball, and he's done that, right? But the difference is that's very linear, is the way he described it, right? You have you have a set, you go to commercial break, you come back, you're calling action in real time. It's one long game. It's a very different thing than what is asked to be done by you at WWE. And so, again, I don't want to beat a dead horse here with Jimmy Smith and how we're all kind of like, I think, immediately making our own decisions about how he's going to fare in this space. But there are a lot of kind of red flags here that we've seen in the past of people that have rolled into this, like the same kind of legitimate background, the same kind of 20 minutes with Michael Cole. It's a very different beast than what you're going to get calling regular sports,
Yeah, I would say that having a history and a background in sports announcing may not necessarily be required for this role. I think that it gives them some legitimacy, but I don't think it's necessarily required, especially for people who are accustomed to sitting on a set like what Rich was talking to you about. There's producers literally standing in front of you. Okay, going to break in 3, 2, 1, we're back. That doesn't happen on WWE necessarily because, especially if you're doing a live event, you're sitting right there.
I've thought for a while, like Second City here in Chicago, they offer all these different programs. I'd love for them to offer a writing curriculum, but I also feel like you could just sit around and train a bunch of improv nerds how to do pro wrestling commentary and probably wind up with some pretty good results now that I think about it.
There's probably a bunch of improvisational comedy nerds who love wrestling to begin with.
I know. And it's just like, where you put, like, again, like, I'm trying to open my mind up. Like, who are the best people that would be suited for this kind of role, who can be flexible and think on their toes? You're right. I don't know that a background in legitimate sports is kind of necessary. VW Iper 19 saying Adnan was put in a no-win situation. He's from the world of baseball. It's a slower pace compared to WWE. It's exactly what we're saying here right now.
Exactly, Vanessa. That's a true story too, because it is something that baseball, by the very nature of what's happening, it's slow paced. You don't need to be. Yeah. WWE is not that.
Let's see here. I'll say, putting you over one more time. I feel bad for Jimmy. He's being judged before he can even speak.
Welcome to wrestling.
Yeah, and let's see here. All right. Anyway, I also
your push is stopped before you even start in wrestling.
Ryan W. Everyone needs to meet more LGBT people. No Q, just the T. Whatever. All right, let's dive away from commentary talk here. Breaking news: Tom Phillips really just threw us all into disarray here.
Yeah, absolutely.
We are still going to stick on Raw. Pro Wrestling Torch was the first to report Raw's viewership yesterday. This was Raw featuring the women's tag titles match in the main event. Natalya and Tamina retaining over Anaya and Shayna. There was explosions. There was a challenge to fight a man to close the show. Well, this show did 1.621 million viewers, down 11% from last week's 1.823. First hour did 1.661 million. Second, 1.655, so incredibly stable. But then dipping there in that final hour to 1.546. This week's Raw drew a 0.45 in the 18 to 49, down 6.3 from last week's 0.48 rating. This week's Raw viewership down 11% from last week's. Monday's Raw drew the lowest audience of the year so far, fourth lowest audience in Raw history. The key demo rating was also the lowest of the year, second lowest in show history for that demo. This week's Raw viewership was down 6.5 from the same week in 2020 when they were in the Performance Center, while this week's 18 to 49 demo was down 11% from the same week in 2020. Fourth worst all time. Paul, any takeaways from this?
There's a few takeaways. First of all, one of the things that I was coming to mind when we were going through this and we were reading this is that for people, for example, we were looking at these overall, when it was head to head between NXT and AEW, those numbers, we were always looking at those. And one of the things that what couldn't help but think here is that on its best week, right, AEW is drawing about 1 million viewers, and Monday Night Raw, which is the flagship program, is only drawing double that. So people who want to discount AEW as an actual competitor with WWE need to really start to rethink that. Yes, there's 1 million more viewers, but how quickly can that ground be made up? So the other thing I was thinking about this is that if you are a casual viewer and you tune in and you're seeing basically the same matches you've seen for the last 3 weeks, dude, like, where is this going? What story why do I need to watch this? I think that it becomes the mentality of that I used to have when my roommate in college watched Days of Our Lives every day, and you would come back and I would skip 3 weeks and I'd walk in, he'd be watching it, and I'd be like, this feels like the exact same episode I just saw 3 weeks ago. They're talking, nothing is progressing here. So I think that's a big part of it.
And I'm trying to see the silver lining here because, Paul, I'm like, and maybe I'm like justifying to myself why these decisions.
Maybe.
But if they know they're going to get back on the road here, July 16th, why would you give anything away in this environment? Right? Like, I forget exactly who I talked with. I think I have an interview with Axel Tischer, Alexander Wolf, the former Alexander Wolf. We're going to drop that next week. But I'll tease this. I talked a little bit about the Wednesday Night War and how Hunter reacted to it down at the Performance Center. And he recalled a conversation where Hunter said to him, the demos don't matter. Nothing matters. Viewership doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is if the TV network that is paying you money for your show is happy. That is it, right? And so if WWE
That's true.
Right? None of this matters, right? It is all irrelevant in their minds, right? So if USA is happy, if they're saying to them, look, we're going to hold some things back. We got some bigger plans around the corner. We're going to get fans back. I see a little method to that madness. It's really not so great in the moment. And I'll put over as well. Where's the here we go. I think it's this one. Yeah. From putting you over, do you think Raw was throwing a monkey wrench with the tragic passing of Alexis Pig? Maybe a segment with her closing the show is supposed to happen. I agree with that. I will give them some, distance on that one. We have no idea what was going on with that. But that's not the whole show. Like Alexis Pig, Larry Steve passing away does not have them do 8 rematches on one show. That's not how that works, I
100% can understand Hunter's perspective on that because, it's like anything really, as long as your employer is happy.
Right.
And the employer in this situation is the network because they're the one who's paying the bills. If your employer is happy, what is the point? Right. Like what, if you're, a lot of people just go through the motions as they go to work every single day because the employer, they give the employer 40% and the employer's like, okay, fine. So you slack off or whatever. I think that the unfortunate downside of this is that in the long run, the viewer is the one that is hurting because we've seen these. I mean, wouldn't it be beautiful if there was more than 2 women's tag teams in all of WWE? I mean, wouldn't it be interesting if we got to see other teams facing Natty and Tamina now that they're champions? One of the reasons I was so excited about them becoming champions is I actually thought that with those 2 individuals as the champions, teams like Naomi and Lana and the Riot Squad and other teams that have been sort of pushed to the side would actually feel more like legitimate contenders, and we would get to see that mixed in, right? I mean, it's just not happening. Whatever the plan is, I'm not on board with it, and I'm frankly tired of seeing the same outcomes.
I'm really surprised that they've stuck with the women's tag titles as long as they have. I mean, it does feel like, you
think they should have gotten rid of them or would have gotten rid of them?
I would have moved them down to NXT and dropped them from the main roster. They just don't get it. I just don't think it works on Raw. I don't think Vince gets it. I don't think the creative team is like there for it. But I trust Hunter down in NXT with those titles. I think the NXT tag titles are like far more in a very short period of time, far more credible and compelling than the main roster ones.
Well, what I look at is the fact that when they were trying to build up towards introducing them, there were at least 8 women's teams at any given time, and it was very competitive, and it wasn't treated like squash matches or whatever we see, and people can argue that, Mandy and Dana aren't a squash team or this or that or whatever, but the way they're presented is nothing short of that. Why not have these women come out there and actually compete? And it showcases the great thing about tag teams is you get to showcase 4 superstars at one time and develop, an attachment to any of those. But whatever's happened to Mandy anyway is like, I'm not sure about that. She went from like hot commodity, the central focal point of storytelling on SmackDown, to barely being visible, getting a mom haircut and being barely visible on Raw. Awkward.
Peter Corey, all women's tag teams are makeshift. Who cares? Yeah, that's been a problem too. Is like they let they broke up the Iconics and they released them, and it's like that's a very clear signal to me that there is no importance on the women's tag team division on the main roster. There would have to be a major creative change, I think, there for them to kind of get it. I just don't see them getting it at the moment.
Well, you have to understand also that these individuals already have 2 strikes against them in the WWE world. 1, they're women. 2, they're a tag team. Right. Unless you are one of about 6 women in WWE, you do not seem to matter. And if you are a tag team, you scarcely matter. So they have the 2 strikes working against them in this situation, and I don't know that they can overcome it. I don't think that, I just look at WWE. It's got 3 hours of storytelling it could be doing on Monday nights, and there's a lot of stories that can be told in 3 hours and a lot of characters that can be developed, and they would rather focus on a handful of people than share the wealth. If you get to be seen at catering for 2 seconds as somebody passes in the back hallway, they're like, you should be happy about that.
Yeah. All right. Well, moving away from Raw viewership in the women's tag division, I don't really know how we got there. I don't remember.
I think I mentioned it because of the fact that we've seen that.
Oh, that's right.
That match between the tag champs and Nia and Shayna now for like 4 weeks in a row.
That's right. Main event.
On every show.
WrestleVotes. They reported that WWE brass held an internal, quote, reassurance meeting after letting go of more than 35 office employees on Tuesday. It's actually, the number's way higher internationally and with the studios and everything.
A lot.
Yeah, a lot higher. They noted that although the conference included most of the power players, including WWE President and Chief Revenue Officer Nick Khan, it was merely a status quo meeting. Despite the reassurance, many still felt no more assured about their positions than they did before the meeting. Yeah, nothing says reassurance like, we're going to have a reassurance meeting to talk to you about how you're totally not losing your jobs. God.
Right. I mean, it's one of those things where you will have to question the sincerity of that meeting, right? Because they probably had a reassurance meeting of some kind with all those people 2 weeks ago, and now they're all sitting in an unemployment line, while WWE still has job postings up looking for new employees.
Very weird. Very weird.
And it's true, because they're on Indeed right now.
Yeah, very weird. It's gonna be just hard for them to get good talent, right? I mean, you're getting people that
Is it hard for them to get good talent?
I mean, why would you, if you have a good resume and are looking to like build, go work for a company right now that's in an obvious, I think all this stuff, this like bloodbath of releases and stuff, I think they're trimming down for a sale. I'd wait 6 months to see where WWE's at before picking up a application to go to work there. That's my instinct right there. So,
well, whether they're looking to sell or not sell, or what could potentially be ahead for them, I would say if you are somebody who has a family and wants some kind of long-term stability, this may not be the workplace for you.
Yeah. So also the Matt Min podcast reporting that backstage, some WWE talent are disappointed with John Cena for apologizing to China for calling Taiwan a country. When it was noted that Cena might have backstage heat for the apology, it was said, disappointment is more the word I heard coming from some talent, adding the apology bothers WWE because they didn't issue it. It was outside pressure that they had no control over. A lot of the chatter from non-executive level status was negative. Personally, I don't know what the board's opinion was, but I have heard it's not positive. Is this going to really like become a thing? Is this going to be an anchor around John Cena's neck, the fact that he kowtowed to China?
Well, first of all, I don't understand exactly why he would apologize for calling Taiwan a country. Taiwan is a country.
Taiwan is I did some research into this. It's very complicated what Taiwan is. The Chinese would prefer that you not say that Taiwan is a country because that Taiwan is part of China.
And it is, in the same way that Puerto Rico is part of the United States.
Correct. Yes.
I did an
comparison. Very good comparison. Yes.
I did an 8-day tour of Taiwan, and that country is gorgeous. It's beautiful. And I will tell you, the people of Taiwan would want that apology from John Cena, would not want that, because they want to distance themselves from the People's Republic of China. Taiwan wants independence.
Yes, and there's a lot of issues with China in general right now. Genocide, right?
Well, I mean, first of all, why is John Cena give a shit?
Well, not that John, I think personally, cares about this. John has resigned himself that he is a vessel, right? He is a vessel for many other people's careers. He is a vessel for whatever, I guess. Maybe he wants to make inroads there. Maybe he wants to be Muhammad Ali when he's 60 and 70, going around the world trying to bring peace and show it was all worth it or whatever. I don't know John Cena's MO at the moment. I don't really believe that he wanted to issue this apology. I think he was a bit more pushed into it. The bigger problem here is that, like, people that speak out against China, actors that speak out against China, are probably going to get less work because of this. And now we live in a world where Hollywood is like going to be working with people that are more willing to concede and kiss the ring of China or other places that necessarily don't have the best records. And is that really kind of the culture we like want to be building towards? I feel like there's going to be a breaking point for that at some point.
I don't have any thoughts on that particularly, but I will say that I think it's interesting to note the fact that WWE is expressing any kind of disappointment. It's John Cena. You need him. He doesn't quite need you. You know, and also I will say that without citing a source, like I know that if you break lines with what WWE wants, it can cause problems. Probably not if you're John Cena, but if you are other people.
I want to see what happens if John does come back. First SmackDown live crowd, are they there for him, or are red-blooded Americans upset that like John Cena went and openly declared his love to communist China? Like I do just wonder, like, is there any lingering, lasting effect on John Cena? Because this is not just getting picked up on wrestling. This is a bigger thing. This is being talked about on legitimate news outlets. It's everywhere, you know?
Right. But the reason that it's being picked up and talked about on regular news channels is because he's John Cena.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if it was, you know, any other person that we as a wrestling community revere, if it was Booker T, we'll say, you know, Booker T, legendary professional wrestler. If this happened to Booker T, nobody would care except wrestling fans. This is John Cena, and John Cena is the Hulk Hogan, of his generation, or the Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock of his generation. So, or of this generation, and who will become that in the future, we don't know. But I think that mainstream name recognition is what makes this an across the board news article.
Anthony Y, Cena, but I respect him. I imagine
you can't see him, but you respect him.
I imagine that he did the face thing. All right. I hope I really don't have to talk about this China thing anymore, because I feel like I'm probably going to wind up on a list at some point. Busted Open Radio.
I'm probably already on a list. The fact that we even brought it up.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Busted Open Radio, they had Chris Jericho on. He revealed that Eric Bischoff is going to be part of Friday's episode of Dynamite and host an Inner Circle celebration, with the idea being that maybe the Inner Circle is going to break up if they lose Stadium Stampede, so they're going to have a big celebration to celebrate themselves. A celebration of a celebration, I guess. And Bischoff.
Will it be their send-off celebration?
Maybe.
Who knows?
I wonder with Chris, like the Stone Cold Steve Austin thing, and Vince letting him do it. I don't know when Chris's contract with AEW is up. I think he signed a 3-year, and we're like 2.5 years into that. If the Inner Circle does break up and he kind of just becomes like a lone wolf for a little while, and I wonder if next year if he doesn't wind up back with WWE. I just continue to think that. I don't know.
You know, the interesting thought that I have is that you have Chris Jericho on your programming, and he hasn't been a world title contender since the moment he lost that belt. So, you know, arguably the largest star and name that they have, and nowhere near their world title situation. So they brought him in to establish the credibility of their title, and now they've really incrementally moved him away from it. I think that, honestly, I think it would be for the best for everybody involved in the Inner Circle if they all parted ways, because I don't think I think they've maximized what they can get from that. Like, you know.
Yeah. And lastly here, before we get to Cody, if you're listening in audio form, or the end of the show if you're watching us in video form, AEW star Brian Cage, he's joined the cast of the Jasper horror movie. Producer Sean Cairo of Pitchfork sent word that the FTW champion is going to play the role of a character named Hammer in the movie. Now, written by award-winning writer-director Keith Vale, Jasper tells the story of a young woman, Erin O'Brien, and her friends as they are stalked by a vicious serial killer who disposes of bodies using the hogs on his small southwestern farm. It's scheduled to be released in theaters on February 25th, 2022. Wow. Brian Cage.
I'm a huge horror film fan, and I also am a true crime fan. And just so you know, listeners and viewers, you legitimately can dispose of bodies by dumping them with a bunch of hogs. They will eat everything. They will literally eat the bones. Mm-hmm. Great idea. Great concept. And Brian Cage, you know, I've been looking for him to probably make a breakout. Any of us out there see him in a role like we've seen Dave Bautista fill? Dude, you know,
he has such a look like, you know, silent and violent. You know, if
keep him quiet, his
yeah,
voice kills it.
yeah, one or two real good critical reviews of even a little bit of his work, and I could see Cage. And then, you know, he already kind of worked that cinematic style and look over at Lucha Underground.
Absolutely.
So, oh, there it is. There it is. All right. Well, that'll bring us to the end of the show. Real quick, from the chat room here. Yeah. Rob Humphrey says, it looks like Jericho's hitting the road with Fozzy soon. Rocky Buyout saying the Fozzy tour, maybe that's why they're writing Jericho off.
Absolutely.
That makes a ton of sense. And I don't know how long they're touring. And again, like, when does he come back? Would it be the rest of the back half of the year? I don't really know, you know?
Well, you know, anybody with an outside interest like that, Jericho being a live musician, we're coming up as soon as places reopen, it doesn't matter. People will be flooding live music venues and all of that. So, and he can make mad cash. He doesn't obviously probably even need the income at this point. I think it's going to be about personal fulfillment for him, right? And I'm sure that he's been living the wrestling life and the wrestling dream for the last year or something like that solidly without doing any of these outside ventures. And this is just going to be that opportunity for him to, you know, fulfill the other part of himself.
Also Ryan W saying, dude, Cage is going to be a big movie star if he is good at acting again. I don't really think he needs to act.
I don't think he needs to be good at acting. I think that, you know, he could. Remember when Toru Tanaka, like Professor Toru Tanaka, became like the bad guy in all those James Bond films and like a variety of films? He didn't have to act at all. All he had to do is stand there and be imposing and scary looking. And Brian Cage could be the same thing. Like, you know, throw him in some body paint, give him some cool, like, you know, gear, and he looks the part of any superhero film that he would want to be part of.
And I think that he should go to the Dave Bautista School of Acting and just wear them tiny glasses. You know, like Brian Cage in them tiny glasses. I'm immediately like, who is this man? Is his daughter on the run? I don't know. He's got tiny glasses, you know? All right.
But Bautista, you know, Bautista's, we just saw that he said that he's opting out of, you know, his future roles to be able to put on some clothes. Cage, I don't think he needs to put on clothes. He doesn't want to put on clothes yet.
Yeah, he's put clothes. He's put on them tiny glasses. He's covering up his eyes. Sorry, I just love those glasses. All right. Let's dive into the mailbag at WInc Daily, WINC Daily over on Twitter. Follow us, find the daily poll, vote in the daily poll, leave a comment. We announce new episodes. We announce all kinds of things over on the WInc Daily account. Follow us there. We have more than 1,000 followers. We're golden. Join the party. All right. Today's poll question stems from an interview that Finn Balor did with our good friend Ryan Satin over on the Out of Character podcast. He says, I feel like in my last run there, meaning the main roster, I wasn't doing myself justice. I needed to change something, and the change came with NXT to kind of figure out who I was again. I've managed to do that to some level, and I'm definitely hopeful that a return to Raw or SmackDown will happen in the future. And with 2 losses to Cross, really not a lot for him to do in NXT. I think a return to I think this could be a tease. I think it could be imminent.
The question that I have with Finn going to the main roster, though, is they have a terrible track record of utilizing him properly. I mean, he got that one major run up to become the first ever Universal Champion, hurt himself, and that was it. You know, he was one and done. And when he came back, they just used him so poorly. You know, what we've seen in NXT right now has been his best work with WWE probably in 5 years.
Oh, yeah.
So my concern would always be how well he would be utilized there. I think that it's very interesting to note that when they put him on the main roster, all of a sudden one of his focal points of his storytelling is that he's a small guy. You know, like that they always present him as like smaller or you know, like in this underdog capacity, versus in NXT he is a star. They treat him like a star. They never you know, like play up that whole size thing or whatever.
I'm kind of just bored of Finn Balor in NXT. I just want to see him in a change. I've seen him kind of wrestle everybody at this point. I don't want to see him drop down to the North American title picture. I don't want to see him making silly jokes with Cameron Grimes. Like, I think that the fish has gotten too big for the pond. Time to free Willy, right? That's how I feel about Finn Balor right now. And so I asked everybody out there, who would you like to see Finn Balor feud with on the main roster. I asked Roman Reigns, Bobby Lashley, Seth Rollins, or somebody else. Well, over 350 votes here. A ton of write-ins that we'll get to.
Mostly write-ins I saw.
Yeah, I have to jump on the Cody call in like 15 minutes, and I have to call in beforehand to get in line. So we may not get to all the write-ins, unfortunately, because of that. But we'll get to as many as we can. So 39.5% saying Roman Reigns, 36% Seth Rollins, so almost a dead heat there. 15.9% Bobby Lashley, and 8.6 somebody else. Who did you vote for here today, Paul?
I didn't actually give it a lot of thought because I don't want him to go to the main roster. Okay. I mean, like I think that if of the people presented, the write-in that I saw the most often that I really agree with is AJ Styles. If they want to, but AJ Styles right now locked into the tag division, and I don't know that that's going to happen. But in terms of actual in-ring competition, that's the match that I'd be most interested in seeing, followed by Seth Rollins.
Yeah, and I think that maybe there could be a combo here, because when I started thinking about this, I just put the champions up there in Rollins because Rollins and Balor just work really well together. Cesaro is really just getting his ass handed to him by Reigns and the Usos, and now Seth Rollins randomly comes in like a jackal and picks at the carcass after they've beaten him down. Finn Balor coming back to kind of help.
Isn't it interesting that you said like a jackal, because his character is very much like the Jackal, played by Don Callis back in the day.
Jackal-esque. I don't know that Don Callis was able to move quite like Seth, but yes.
I mean the persona, the personality, yeah.
He is Jackal-esque. I could see Finn coming back to the aid of Cesaro and, helping to fend off Roman and the Usos and Seth, and then Cesaro spins out, and then Finn Balor's positioned to go up against a Roman Reigns come SummerSlam. I'd be into that. Sure, why not?
That's a good story.
Yeah, that's not bad. Let's see. I'll just say I'll read this one comment. I'll read maybe more tomorrow on Fun Friday. We don't have time on that, fortunately. Six Rings 9880. Slapjack defeats Ninja Guy for 24/7 title on 205 Live. Demon sneak attacks him on main event, wins the 24/7. Hell in a Cell, Slappy beats Demon in a zombie pre-show match for the title. 24/7 champ Slappy wins Money in the Bank. Demon defeats him at SummerSlam for title, but then he cashes in and beats Roman Reigns. Well, it's just poetry.
I leaned forward and I'm massaging my temples because I read that. It gave me a headache just trying to keep up with the storyline. The unfortunate reality of this is, sir or ma'am, whoever submitted this, you've given too long-term of storytelling to ever fit with WWE. We need you to only think 1 week at a time, one episode at a time. Just have them do something this week. It doesn't matter if it leads to something next week. Sir, you're thinking too long-term.
I'll say putting you over, who's been great. Welcome to the chat thread. Come back tomorrow. Still has beef with Rollins, who injured him. And then, VW Viper 19. I agree with Rollins or Cesaro, and Leonard Bowden also saying AJ, but he wants AJ and Finn to wrestle for the tag titles, and different, but I think kind of defeats the purpose of tag titles if two singles people are fighting for them.
Well, I mean, did he mean as a team together?
I don't know.
Well, the fact is WWE loves the whole, oh my gosh, they can't get along, but they're tag team champions. Oh, because there's just no teams on the roster to actually fill those spots and get some glory. So you have to put two top tier singles wrestlers together to fill the spot for them.
Also both former Bullet Club leaders, right?
Yes, so, absolutely.
All right, everybody, that's going to bring us to the end of the show. I would love to read more comments, but again, I have to go get in line for this Cody Rhodes media call. Paul has been great. I'll be joined here tomorrow by Christy Olson. Also on the show tomorrow, we'll debut it at 1 Eastern over on the YouTube channel, and it'll be part of the audio feed. My conversation with AEW's Anthony Ogogo. This man savages the American healthcare business for about 15 minutes right up top. And
he's the bad guy.
And he's the bad.
He's the heel for wanting everybody to have like medical coverage. How could you, Anthony Ogogo?
We get into it. I start off the interview going, "Are you the bad guy?" Like, I kind of want to know your take on this. And
how dare you not want people to die in the streets, have health care? I mean, how could you, Anthony Ogogo? That's the most un-American thing I've ever heard.
This Cody call is going to be wild. So Anthony's going to be on tomorrow. Come on back for that. Also support the Wrestling Inc. Daily by supporting Wrestling Inc. We're on all the social media platforms. And at night, after the big shows, we go live with the Wrestling Inc. podcast. Paul, what do you want to plug, promote, put over here to wrap up the show today?
I'm just really, I've had a great week. I'm super excited to be here with you every Thursday. Follow me on social media, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, twitch.tv/Pollo Del Mar. I am loving the interactions with the wrestling fans out there. So thanks for having me.
All right. And I am Nick_Hausman over on Twitter. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I'll talk to you tomorrow. And remember, if you winked, you didn't miss it.